We're going to begin this hour, though, with the continued fallout from the Supreme Court's historic ruling on the presidency. It ruled in favor of former President Donald Trump that he and future presidents have absolute immunity, but only when it comes to official acts while in office. Now, this ruling puts the future of Trump's federal election interference case, though, into jeopardy. And last night, Trump's lawyers moved to have his guilty verdict tossed out in his New York hush money criminal trial.
Okay, so November 6th, 2025, that's just 2 days ago, and the entire legal system just flipped on its head. Again, the Supreme Court, or actually a federal appeals court, just handed Donald Trump another win. And listen, this isn't just some boring legal technicality. This is about whether a former president, any former president, can literally get away with anything, like anything. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. Oh, great, another Trump immunity story. But hold on, because what happened this week is way bigger than most people realize. The appeals court just ordered a completely new review of Trump's immunity claim in that New York hush money case. You remember that one, right? The Stormy Daniels payments? The falsified business records? Yeah, that case. The one where he was actually convicted, found guilty on 34 felony counts. But here's the thing. Here's where it gets absolutely wild. The court is saying, wait, hold up. We need to look at this again. And why? Because of a Supreme Court ruling from July 2024. A ruling that basically said presidents have broad immunity for their official acts. Broad immunity. Let that sink in for a second. So now we're in this insane situation where Trump's legal team is arguing, and I'm not making this up, that paying hush money to a porn star might have been an official presidential act. Are you kidding me? Like, how is that official? How is covering up an affair to help your campaign? How is that part of running the country? But that's exactly what they're claiming. And the courts, they're actually taking it seriously. They have to, because the Supreme Court opened this massive door last year, and now everyone's trying to figure out what counts as an official act and what doesn't. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
This is hugely important, both as a decision with impact on the ongoing prosecution of the former president, but more importantly, it is a case that has huge implications for the presidency generally and for this country's democracy, the nature of this country's democracy.
So I want to clarify, because people are tuning in and they're seeing the phrase absolute immunity. It's actually partial immunity in a way, right? So the court ruled that Donald Trump, or any president, has absolute immunity for actions within, and the quote is, the conclusive and preclusive constitutional authority. So as in his role as president, also entitles him to at least, and here's another part of it, presumptive immunity for his remaining official actions. Just help us understand which powers are and are not protected under this immunity decision.
Right. Well, you put your finger on an extremely difficult problem, which is to distinguish between those two kinds of official acts. So just taking one step back, what the Supreme Court says is that there is no immunity for unofficial acts. So certain things that the president does while president have nothing to do with the presidency. And those are unofficial acts, things that were taken perhaps according to a campaign for campaign purposes would be considered unofficial acts. But the vast majority of things that a president does fall into this category of official acts. And then, as you say, the Supreme Court creates two different categories of official acts. Those core constitutional functions, the ones that are explicitly designated by the Constitution, are the ones that receive absolute immunity. And then there are these other official acts, which are not necessarily core to the president's functions, but still a part of what he does as president. And there's a little bit more wiggle room or ambiguity there because the court says he's presumptively immune. And what that means is that a prosecutor would be able to rebut that presumption, show that a prosecution in this instance for these let's say, outer perimeter official acts is important and would not impinge on executive authority, wouldn't cut too much into the power of the presidency.
Come on, this is wild. And let's be real here. This isn't just about Trump. I mean, yeah, it's about Trump right now. But what we're really talking about is setting a precedent that could affect every future president, every single one. If Trump gets immunity for this stuff, what does that mean for the next guy or the next woman? What does it mean when someone in the Oval Office decides to break the law and then just claims, oh, that was official business? The Supreme Court's July 2024 ruling, it said Trump cannot be prosecuted for actions taken within his constitutional authority as president. Okay, fine. That makes some sense, right? Like a president shouldn't be prosecuted for vetoing a bill or appointing a judge or doing normal president stuff. But where's the line? That's the whole problem. The Supreme Court drew this vague, fuzzy line and then basically said, good luck figuring it out. And now, special counsel Jack Smith is freaking out. He's filing these court documents, calling Trump's immunity claim novel and sweeping, novel and sweeping. That's lawyer speak, for this is completely insane and dangerous. Smith's warning that if Trump gets away with this, it undermines the entire principle that no person is above the law. No person. That includes presidents, that includes billionaires, that includes, well, anyone. But here we are, November 2025. In Trump's federal criminal trial, the one that was supposed to happen before now, yeah, that got delayed, pushed back, probably won't happen anytime soon. And why? Because of immunity claims, because of these endless legal battles over whether prosecuting him is even allowed. So let me ask you something, and really think about this. If a president can claim immunity for basically anything, what stops them from doing whatever they want? What's the check? What's the balance? Because right now, it feels like there isn't one. And this isn't some hypothetical future problem. This is happening right now. Trump is using this immunity shield to delay, to deflect, to avoid accountability, and it's working. The appeals court just gave him another shot, another chance to argue that what he did, paying off a porn star, falsifying business records, all of it was just part of being president. Can you believe this? The constitutional crisis everyone warned about? It's not coming. It's here. It's happening. And the Supreme Court, whether they meant to or not, they just handed every future president a get out of jail free card. Maybe, we don't know yet. That's what makes this so dangerous. Nobody knows where the line is anymore. And here's what really keeps me up at night. If we can't hold a president accountable for clear crimes, crimes that a jury already convicted him of, then what can we hold them accountable for? What's off limits? What line can't they cross? Because right now, it seems like there isn't one. It seems like as long as you're president, or as long as you were president, you can do whatever you want and just hide behind this immunity shield. That's not what the founders wanted. That's not what democracy looks like. That's something else entirely. Something much more dangerous. And we're going to break down exactly how we got here, what it means for the future, and why this might be the most important legal battle of our generation. Because trust me, this affects everyone, every single American, whether you support Trump or despise him, whether you care about politics or not. This ruling is going to shape the presidency for decades to come. So stick around, because we're diving deep into this constitutional nightmare. All right, so let's dig into what actually happened here, because the details matter. And honestly, the details make this even crazier than the headlines suggest. So July 1st, 2024, that's when the Supreme Court dropped its ruling on presidential immunity. And look, this wasn't some quick decision. This was a massive case. Trump versus United States. The court spent months on this. Oral arguments, briefs, all of it. And when they finally ruled, it was a split decision. Shocker, right? The majority said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that presidents have absolute immunity for actions within their core constitutional powers. Absolute immunity. And then they said presidents have presumptive immunity for other official acts. Presumptive. That's the word that's causing all the problems now. Because what does presumptive mean? It means maybe. It means it depends. It means we have to figure it out case by case. Yeah, exactly. It's vague. And that vagueness is the whole problem. Now, the dissent. Oh man, the dissent was brutal. Justice Sotomayor wrote this scathing dissent where she basically said, and again, paraphrasing, you just made the president a king. She warned that this ruling could let presidents commit crimes and then hide behind immunity. She said it goes against everything the founders intended, everything about checks and balances, everything about no one being above the law. And here's the thing, she wasn't wrong. Like, think about what the founders wanted. They literally fought a war to get away from a king. They created a system specifically designed to prevent anyone from having too much power, checks and balances, 3 branches of government, all of that. And now the Supreme Court is saying, well, actually, the president is kind of special. The president gets extra protections. Are you kidding me? The whole point of America, the whole revolutionary idea was that nobody gets to be above the law. Nobody, not a king, not a president, not anyone. But apparently, we're rethinking that now. So fast forward to November 6th, 2025, 2 days ago. The Federal Appeals Court looks at Trump's New York hush money conviction and says, okay, we need to reconsider this in light of the Supreme Court's immunity ruling. They're sending it back for a new review, a fresh look, and Trump's team is obviously thrilled. They're arguing that the whole case should be thrown out, dismissed, gone. Their argument goes like this. They say the hush money payments happened while Trump was president. Sort of. I mean, the affair was years earlier, but the payments and the cover-up, some of that happened during his presidency, and therefore it's an official act. It's immune. And look, I get it. You're probably thinking, how is paying hush money to a porn star an official presidential act? Great question. Everyone's asking that. Even the prosecutors are asking that. But Trump's lawyers, they're creative. They're arguing that protecting the president's reputation is part of the job, that maintaining public confidence in the office is official business, that anything done to preserve the presidency counts as an official act. Come on, are you kidding me? But here's why this matters. Here's why we can't just dismiss this as Trump being Trump. The Supreme Court's ruling created this gray area, this massive zone of uncertainty, and now every lawyer in America is trying to exploit it, not just Trump's lawyers, everyone. Because if Trump can claim immunity for this, what else qualifies? What else can a president do and then just claim it was official? Let me give you some examples. Say a president orders the IRS to audit their political enemies. Official act? Maybe. Say a president tells the Justice Department to investigate someone they don't like. Official act? Probably. Say a president takes a bribe, but they do it in the Oval Office and they claim it was part of negotiating policy. Official act? Who knows? Say a president decides to sell pardons. Just straight up sells them for cash. But they do it through official channels. They claim it's part of their constitutional pardon power. Official act? Based on the Supreme Court's ruling? Maybe. I mean, the pardon power is explicitly in the Constitution. So if they're exercising that power, even corruptly, is that immune? This is the nightmare scenario legal experts warned about. And it's not theoretical anymore. It's real. Trump is using it right now. And whether he wins or loses, the precedent is being set. The door is open. Now, Special Counsel Jack Smith, let's talk about him, because he's been fighting this battle for months. Smith's prosecuting Trump on multiple fronts. The classified documents case, the January 6th case, all of it. And Trump's response to everything? Immunity. Just blanket immunity claims across the board. Smith filed this brief with the Supreme Court, I think it was back in April 2024, where he called Trump's immunity argument novel and sweeping. And he wasn't being complimentary. He was warning the court. He was saying, if you rule for Trump on this, you're creating a system where presidents can break the law with impunity. With impunity. That means without consequences, without punishment, without accountability. And yeah, that's exactly what happened. The Supreme Court ruled for Trump, not completely, but enough. Enough to throw everything into chaos. Enough to delay all his trials. Enough to make it almost impossible to hold him accountable before anything. Because here's the timing issue. November 2025, Trump's already serving his second term, but all these criminal cases, they're still pending, still delayed, still tied up in these immunity battles. The federal trial that was supposed to happen, pushed back indefinitely. The New York case, now under review again. The classified documents case, stalled. And this is by design. This is the strategy. Delay, delay, delay. Use immunity claims, file appeals, drag everything out, and eventually, maybe the whole thing just goes away. Maybe people forget. Maybe the statute of limitations runs out. Maybe something. Let's talk about precedent for a second, because this isn't the first time we've dealt with presidential accountability. Nixon got pardoned. Ford gave him a blanket pardon for any crimes he might have committed. Clinton got impeached, but not removed from office, and he faced no criminal charges after leaving office. So there's this pattern, this history of presidents getting special treatment, but Trump's taking it to a whole new level. He's not asking for a pardon. He's arguing that he can't even be prosecuted in the first place. That's different. That's bigger, because a pardon admits guilt. A pardon says, yeah, I did something wrong, but I'm being forgiven. Immunity says I didn't do anything wrong because I'm immune. The rules don't apply to me. Can you see the difference? It's huge. It's the difference between accountability and nothing. between a system with consequences and a system where the powerful just get away with everything. And the Supreme Court, whether they meant to or not, they basically agree with him. They say, yeah, presidents are special. Presidents get immunity. Now go figure out what that means. So now we've got lower courts trying to figure it out, trying to apply this vague ruling to specific cases, trying to decide what counts as official and what doesn't. And it's a mess, a complete mess. Different courts are reaching different conclusions. Some are giving broad immunity. Some are being restrictive. There's no consistency, no clear standard. Here's what really gets me though. The Supreme Court's ruling. It wasn't just about Trump. It applies to every president, every future president. So even if you hate Trump, even if you want him prosecuted, you have to think about the implications. What happens when the next president uses this same immunity shield? What happens when someone you like is in office and they claim immunity for something questionable? This is about the system. This is about whether we have a system where everyone, and I mean everyone, is accountable to the law, or whether we have a system where the president gets special privileges, where the president can act with impunity. And right now we're sliding toward the latter. We're creating a presidency that's more powerful than the founders ever intended, more protected, more kingly. And yeah, I use that word on purpose, because that's what Justice Sotomayor said in her dissent. The majority just made the president a king. And if you think about American history, if you think about why this country exists in the first place, that should terrify you. We fought a war to get away from a king. We created a whole system to prevent anyone from having that kind of power. And now we're just giving it away. We're just saying, actually, yeah, the president is above the law. Come on. Okay, so let's break this down into what actually matters, what you need to understand about where we are right now. Point number 1, the legal system is in complete chaos over this immunity question. Complete chaos. Every court is interpreting the Supreme Court's ruling differently. Some are giving Trump broad immunity. Some are being more restrictive. Nobody knows what the final answer is because, well, there isn't a final answer yet. We're making it up as we go. And that uncertainty, that's exactly what Trump wants, because uncertainty means delay. Delay means his trials don't happen, or they happen so far in the future that it doesn't matter anymore. The strategy is working. Love him or hate him, you have to admit the strategy is working. The New York case, the hush money case, that was the strongest case against him. He was already convicted, found guilty by a jury, 34 felony counts. But now it's under review again. The appeals court is saying, wait, let's reconsider this immunity thing, and Trump's team is arguing the whole conviction should be thrown out, overturned, erased. Will that happen? Probably not. I mean, the hush money payments were about covering up an affair to help in 2016. That's not an official presidential act. That's campaign stuff, personal stuff. But the fact that the court is even reviewing it, that tells you how much the Supreme Court's ruling changed things. And here's what's crazy. If the appeals court does throw out the conviction, if they say Trump had immunity for this, then what? What message does that send? It says you can commit crimes, get convicted by a jury, and then just undo it all with an immunity claim. It says convictions don't matter if you used to be president. That's insane. That's not how the justice system is supposed to work. Point number 2, this affects way more than just Trump. Way more, because we're setting precedent here. We're defining what presidential immunity means for every future president, and that matters. That matters a lot. Think about it like this. Say there's a future president, doesn't matter which party, and they do something illegal. Maybe they take a bribe. Maybe they obstruct justice. Maybe they abuse their power in some way, and then they get caught. But instead of facing consequences, they just claim immunity. They say, I was acting in my official capacity. You can't prosecute me. And based on the Supreme Court's 2024 ruling, they might be right. They might actually get away with it because the court created this broad protection for official acts, and nobody really knows where the line is. Nobody knows what counts as official and what doesn't. So we're potentially creating a system where presidents are above the law, where they can break the rules as long as they do it in an official capacity, or as long as they claim it was official. And that's terrifying, honestly. That's not what the founders wanted. That's not what democracy looks like. Here's a thought experiment. Imagine a future president, let's say 10 years from now, decides they don't like the results of an investigation, so they order the FBI to stop it. They claim it's an official act. They're exercising their executive authority. Is that immune? Can they be prosecuted for obstruction? Based on the Supreme Court's ruling, maybe not. Maybe that's protected. Or imagine a president who uses the military to intimidate political opponents. They claim it's about national security. It's an official act. Are they immune? Can you prosecute them? Who knows? The Supreme Court didn't give us clear answers. These aren't hypothetical scenarios. These are real possibilities, real dangers, and the Supreme Court just opened the door to all of them. Point number 3, the timing of all this is suspicious, really suspicious. The Supreme Court took their sweet time with this ruling. They heard arguments in April 2024, didn't rule until July, and that delay, that pushed all of Trump's trials past the election, past November 2024, which meant Trump could serve his second term before facing any accountability. And now we're in November 2025, and the trials are still delayed, still pending, still caught up in these immunity battles. Special counsel Jack Smith is still fighting, still filing briefs, still trying to move these cases forward. But every time he makes progress, Trump's team files another immunity claim, another appeal, another delay. It's exhausting just watching it. I can't imagine actually being involved in it. The prosecutors must be pulling their hair out. They've got solid cases, evidence, witnesses, documents, and they can't even get to trial because of these immunity claims. But here's the thing. Smith warned about this. He told the Supreme Court, if you rule for Trump on immunity, you're going to create chaos. And they did. And it did. And now we're living in that chaos. Courts don't know how to apply the ruling. Prosecutors don't know what charges will stick. Defense lawyers are claiming immunity for everything. It's a mess. In the Supreme Court, they're probably going to have to weigh in again because the lower courts need guidance. They need clarity. They need someone to tell them what the rules actually are. But will the Supreme Court provide that? Or will they issue another vague ruling that creates more problems? Point number 4, public opinion on this is complicated, really complicated, because it depends entirely on how you feel about Trump. If you support him, you probably think this immunity stuff is great. You probably think he's being unfairly targeted and deserves protection. If you oppose him, you probably think this is outrageous. You probably think he's using legal tricks to avoid accountability. But here's what everyone should care about, regardless of politics. The principle that no one is above the law. That's not a left thing or a right thing. That's an American thing. That's a foundational thing. And right now, we're testing whether that principle still holds. Because if Trump gets immunity for everything, if he successfully avoids prosecution for all of it, what does that tell future presidents? It tells them, go ahead, push the boundaries, do whatever you want, just claim it was official, and you'll probably be fine. That's the precedent we're setting. And it matters. It really matters. Because once you establish that presidents are above the law, once you create that precedent, it's really hard to walk it back. It's really hard to say, wait, actually presidents can be prosecuted after all. So where do we go from here? Great question. I wish I had a clear answer. But honestly, nobody knows. The appeals court is reviewing the New York case. That'll take months, maybe longer. The federal cases are still pending, still delayed. Smith is still fighting. Trump's team is still claiming immunity in the Supreme Court. Well, they're probably going to have to weigh in again eventually because the lower courts need guidance. They need clarity. They need someone to tell them what the rules actually are. But will the Supreme Court provide that clarity? Maybe, maybe not. They might just punt again. They might issue another vague ruling that creates more questions than answers, because that's kind of what they did last time. And meanwhile, we're stuck in this limbo, this weird place where a former president might be immune from prosecution or might not be, where the law applies to some people, but maybe not to the president, where accountability is optional. It's wild. It really is. Here's my take. And yeah, this is just my opinion. But I think the Supreme Court made a huge mistake with their 2024 ruling. I think they tried to thread the needle, tried to give presidents some protection while still maintaining accountability, and they failed. They created this massive gray area that's now being exploited. And we're going to be dealing with the consequences for years, maybe decades, because this isn't just about Trump. This is about the presidency. This is about what kind of system we want. Do we want a system where presidents can be held accountable, where they face consequences for breaking the law? Or do we want a system where presidents are above the law, where they're essentially immune from prosecution? Right now, we're sliding toward the latter. And I don't think most people realize it. I don't think most people understand how big of a deal this is, but it's huge. It's a constitutional crisis in slow motion, and we're watching it happen in real time. The appeals court ruling on November 6th, that's just the latest chapter. There's more coming. More appeals, more immunity claims, more legal battles, and each one is going to chip away at the principle of accountability. Each one is going to make it harder to prosecute a president. Each one is going to move us closer to a system where the president really is above the law. So yeah, that's where we are. November 2025, Trump's immunity claims are working. His trials are delayed, the legal system is in chaos, and nobody knows what happens next. But hey, at least it's never boring, right? Stay tuned, because this story is far from over. The appeals court ruling is just the latest twist. There's going to be more legal battles, more immunity fights, more constitutional questions, and we'll be here to break it all down, because somebody has to explain this mess. Might as well be us.